Hey everybody, how's it going? So you got me not in the car this time, and right now I'm reading from the book of Mark, and it's regarding the baptism of Jesus, where John the Baptist allegedly baptized Jesus, and there comes a scene at about this is Mark chapter 1 verse 11, and it says, "And a voice came from heaven, saying, 'You are my son, who I love. With you I am well pleased.'" Now, who was the voice of? This is the voice of God, right? That's the voice speaking, and God was speaking to Jesus, saying that you are my son, who I love, and I am well pleased. So that got me thinking: is this idea of, well, the first thing I thought of was Zeus from Greek mythology, and I thought to myself, is this idea of, and I mentioned it in another video, is the idea of a god having a son, who's like in earthly form. Was it Jason and the Argonauts, or I can't remember the other one, Clash of the Titans. I can't remember. Perseus, maybe? I think his name was Perseus. Was the son of some union that Zeus had with, I want to say, an earthly woman. I'm not 100% sure. I might be off on that. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is you see that the idea of like a god having a son, I mean, these were common themes that existed, back in that time. And so these were pagan beliefs that existed. So, when you think about Jesus and, he being being really God himself, but yet he's God incarnate, he's, God in the flesh or whatever, but yet he's referred to as the Son of God. It's not a stretch of the imagination to suggest and say that, they just copied Greek mythology. I mean, it's not a stretch, because I mean, those concepts did exist. Now, some people might say, well, maybe Greek mythology copied. No, because that stuff came before the first century, before the time of Jesus, before these Gospels were written in the New Testament, or even this idea. Because I mean, Jesus was alleged to have come around maybe born 1 AD and crucified like around 33, 35 AD, when he was like 35 years old. So anyways, my point is just saying that the idea of a God, when I read that, "You are my son, whom I love, and with you I am well pleased," it made me think of Zeus and Zeus's sons. He probably had many sons, but I know he at least had one, and that relationship that they had with one another. And it's just, so like I said, it's not a stretch that the writers of the Gospels could grab from themes that existed in the ancient world and incorporate those themes and those ideas of, the gods and relationships that they had with earthly people, and, like the Immaculate Conception and all that. I don't think it's a bit of a stretch of the imagination to suggest that it's possible that that's where the writers of the gospel got some of these ideas. Because I've mentioned before that the idea of a son of man or a son of God was foreign to the Hebrew Bible, foreign to the Jews, that's not a concept that they understood. And so why did they not understand that? Well, because the prophets didn't teach them, because God apparently didn't bestow that information on them, that he was going to have a son, or that he would ever come and he would dwell among them, as, say, well, maybe they wouldn't have understood. Well, of course they would have understood, because they had concepts like this from the pagan world around them. So this concept of a son descending from a divine creator was not a foreign concept for them. So I'm inclined to believe that at least that they could have borrowed from these. Now, did they borrow in every aspect? No, maybe not. But at what point, just because you do just borrow a little bit, then automatically, in my mind, I'm thinking it's pretty darn inauthentic. If there's not much original to the Jesus story, when you can find other instances of rising and dying gods, like Mithras and several others, I think it was, what the heck was the other one? I can never remember. There's a whole series of rising and dying gods that had much in common with Jesus, using the Raglan hero archetype. So you can see that it wouldn't have been a stretch to just borrow some of the pagan religions, pagan beliefs, and incorporate them into the New Testament Gospels. So that is what I'm suggesting, and I don't think it's a bit of a stretch of the imagination to do so. I believe that's most likely what happened, and they just retold the story. You know, and of course, they in the New Testament, as I'm reading, like in the book of Mark here, you see where it talks in Mark. He talks about what does he say it here? It was in the very beginning of Mark, at the introduction. It says it is written in the in Isaiah the prophet. So basically, whoever wrote Mark kicks off the beginning of Mark by throwing back to the Old Testament, back to the book of Isaiah, and stating that in the book of Isaiah, it says, "I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way, a voice of one calling in the desert, and this will prepare the way for the Lord and make straight his paths." And that's reference what Mark's trying to use it as he segues into talking about John the Baptist, and that John the Baptist was supposedly the one that was foretold in Isaiah. But Mark, whoever it was that wrote Mark, had knowledge of the Old Testament belief in Isaiah, and so it was nothing for them to go back and grab from Isaiah and just regurgitate this stuff here and then say, oh, and John the Baptist, you know, he was Elijah, even though he was the one that was supposed, because it was Elijah, I believe, that was supposed to come and prepare for the Redeemer. But yet, when John the Baptist was asked if he was, you know, the Messiah, or when he's asked if he was Elijah, he denies that. So why is that? You know, so you can't assert that he's Elijah or try to imply that he is, and then when the man's asked point blank, he says, "No, I'm not Elijah." You know, I'm not that person that needs to come before to make way for the Redeemer. So I don't know why the writer of Mark is trying to go back to Isaiah and imply and suggest that John the Baptist is the messenger who's supposed to come ahead of the Redeemer or the Messiah, who was supposed to be Elijah, which is not John the Baptist. Anyways, I also found it interesting too, where it says in Mark 1, verse 1, it says, John the Baptist prepares the way, is the title. It says, the beginning of the gospel about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And it says in a footnote at the bottom, some manuscripts do not have the Son of God. Well, it's probably because the original manuscripts didn't have the Son of God, because that was a foreign concept to the early Christians, and it was a later, as Christianity began to evolve, this was something they went in and interpolated. They put it into the text when it didn't originally used to be there, and so several manuscripts began to be circulated, and the manuscripts that were circulated with the Son of God in it, all of a sudden, are the ones that were kept. Because that's the whole theme, the whole concept that they kept trying to push about this Son of God thing. Because apparently sons of God were very attractive ideas in ancient times. And it was easier to sell to the pagans because they already believed in that sort of kind of mythology and stuff. So I just find it interesting. I mean, I don't know what the other reason could be for why some manuscripts wouldn't have the Son of God in it, you know, at the beginning of the gospel about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. So probably the original Mark, what they're saying is, just said the beginning of the gospel about Jesus Christ. It never said anything, the Son of God. That was a later thing, because I mean, the first 300 years, Jesus' divinity was questioned, whether or not he could be a son of God. Could he have divinity? Could he be fully man? Could he be fully God? How did that work? And these concepts were foreign. They didn't understand it. So it wasn't until the Council of Nicaea in the 300s that they finally decided to come up with a formal creedal statement, and they said, okay, we believe he's fully God and fully man. So anyways, interesting stuff. I just wanted to make this quick video to share with you all some of the things that I was reading about in the book of Mark, and regarding the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist, allegedly. See you next time.